Uh, Good evening to everyone watching. Actually, I usually do this in Bulgarian, and now I realized.
No, do it.
Okay. So super quickly, just to all the Bulgarians watching the stream live, I see that we already have close to people watching. Здравейте, с нас е Джей Gould и Алеш, който вече го знаете от предишен подкаст, в който говорихме за заедно с Ванката, говорихме за крипто и минахме през нашите истории, така че сега ще се концентрираме върху госта ни. So, Jay Gould, could you please introduce yourself to our audience and just tell us briefly where are you from, what do you do for a living, and what's your connection to crypto?
I am from New Jersey in the United States of America. And what I used to do, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm an investor. So I started several different high growth technology startups over the last 20 years. I sold 3 of them. The last one, the most notable one, was a company called Yashi. Yashi was a video advertising technology. We delivered advertisements in front of videos. So when you're on YouTube and you see an ad first, when you came on the show, you could thank us for that. We built that business up over an 8-year period, sold it to a publicly traded company called Nexstar Broadcasting, which is a large television broadcasting company. They have like 200 TV stations throughout the United States. Sold that in 2015. I have since essentially been retired from that type of business. So I'm no longer actively running companies or actively managing and running companies. I'm an investor in companies. So I'm an investor in about 100 technology companies. Been doing that since about 2007, I guess. It's a small family office that I run for myself and my family. And that's pretty much what we do. My introduction to Bitcoin came a long time ago. I first learned about Bitcoin by reading the blog avc.com. His name is Fred Wilson. He's a venture capitalist in New York City. He's probably the most prolific VC on the East Coast, I would think. And he's the first one that kind of introduced to me just by reading his blog. So I was like, what's this Bitcoin stuff? This magic internet money. He was speaking about it from a perspective of like, what is the ecosystem around this new asset class that's going to develop? And he was investing in those types of companies. He wasn't exactly telling people you should buy Bitcoin. He was just introducing you to, this is something new, guys. This is interesting. And as he would put the blog posts up over the course of a year or so that he was doing that, or 2 years, I think it was like, I might get this wrong. You can go back and check me. So correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it was like 2012, maybe, when I first was thinking about it, if that makes sense. I wasn't buying it. I thought it was a joke, right? I was like, oh no, wait, this isn't going to work. So anybody that like is that early that got in 10 years ago, 2011, or I don't know anybody that bought Bitcoin in 2009 or 10 that still owns it. They probably lost it at Mt. Gox or something. But those people, if they exist, I mean, they've got to be billionaires, right? If they still. Most people who bought early, by the way, sold on the way up. So they say that people have weak hands when the price drops. A lot of people have weak hands when prices go up too, right? So I think the early adopters of this technology were either buying drugs on Silk Road, or they were doing something nefarious, right? Gambling, something like that. I wasn't doing that. I was running tech companies, and I had a focus, and I was very focused on what I was doing. So everything else, I had blinders on like a horse, right? I was just focused on this. Sold the company 2015. Here and there was looking at Bitcoin, never purchased it. 2016 was my first purchase. It was a year later. I was bored and I was like, let me buy some Bitcoin. Maybe there's something to this. The price was moving up. The asset was becoming more valuable. And then over the last year, obviously we saw what happened now. So it's at a point of no return, in my opinion. It's clear dominant winner within all crypto. Has been for a very long time, but it's very clear with the market cap where it was and where it still is now, with a 50% drop at like 650 billion-ish. It was around $1 trillion at the peak, maybe a little bit more than $1 trillion. There's never been a company that reached $100 billion that's gone away. Now, there's a short history of companies worth $100 billion, but there's never been a company that's disappeared, right? So I feel like you hit escape velocity at a certain value. And then the money starts to pour in to protect their own money, as we know, for that. So my introduction to Bitcoin, 2013, took me about 3 years to finally pull the trigger, bought it 2016, and been buying it ever since. And interestingly, I buy more and more of it as it goes up. I'm an idiot, I guess. I don't know. Should have bought more of it when it was lower, right? But I keep buying it on the way up. I buy on dips.
Okay, I have a few questions and comments actually. On the buying on the way up, I was gonna say, just before the stream started, I told you I started really going down the rabbit hole down in 2017, and I started buying around 3,000 or something. And of course, you know, being a newbie, the FOMO being throughout my blood and so on, we hit 5K, I buy more. We hit 7K, I buy more, and so on. We went all the way to 20K, and I remember at 20K, 19.6 whatever, my initial investment was 3x, right? So let's say I put 10 grand in, so I had 30 grand, right? And at that point, I was thinking, okay, this is enough to put a down payment for a house in London. And I was really thinking to cash out. Long story short, I didn't. We went down to 6K, we down to 3K. And during this whole time, because of my conviction, because of my understanding, I was like, this is just cyclical, yada, yada, you know, being more educated months later, I was like, okay, I just continued buying. I bought more at 10K, I bought more at 7K, at 3K, at 6K, at 14K when we had a walkout peak there, and so on and so on and so on. My point is the following, that I did not sell because I did not have life-changing amount of money. For everyone though, life-changing amount of money is a different number. And I talk about this quite frequently on my channel. And I say that for a person that, let's say, has $1,000 monthly income, in my opinion, what I define as life-changing amount of money is not 100 grand or a million or 10 million or 1 billion. For everyone, it's different because everyone is on different level. But the way I pretty much calculated that it's roughly the same, it's 1,000x your monthly income. So you have $1,000 monthly income, 1 million is what you would get in roughly 100 years of income. Like, you can say, no, that's not enough money. Like, what? You never make that much money in your life with your current income. You cannot say, like, that's not a lot of money. Yes, it is. At the same time, for someone, let's say, that makes 5 grand, so that's gonna be 5 million. For someone making 100 grand, right? That's gonna be 1 billion or whatever it is. I don't know. So, do you agree with this about the life-changing amount of money? And because I'm revisiting your point that there were a lot of people that thought they were talking about weekends, and let's say weekends are selling right now, crashing from 60K down to 30K. I would agree, they're weekends, because in my opinion, they're new people to the market, they're scared, they're seeing this dip of 50%, and they're like, I don't know, this thing might be crashing down to zero, or maybe this was the end of the cycle and see you again in 4 years or something. To me, it's just a dip. I'm not going to go down that path of let's discuss, is it the end of the bull market or no, but the weekends sell definitely during a dip, but about going up, I don't think that it's weekends when you reach 1,000x of your monthly income, because at that time you have like a responsibility to yourself to walk in these profits, to diversify them. I'm not saying to spend them, to diversify them, so you're not 100% dependent from that moment to Bitcoin, because let's say for whatever reason, like, you know, the standard FUD, quantum computers or governments attack it, yada, 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 maybe it crashes. And if it crashes and you get 1,000 salaries, that's, I don't know, I think you have to walk in these profits.
Okay. It's a lot to respond to, but I will say, I don't know that you're wrong, right? I can't say you're wrong on this. The 1,000x of a monthly income. I thought it's an interesting. I was pulling out a calculator and doing this. I was like, oh, well, what's my number? So, we call this "fuck you" money, just so you know, right? You're right. I don't know what you were calling it, but as I was hearing it, I'm hearing "fuck you" money.
We say the same thing. We say the
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, definition of "fuck you" money is not so analytical. You're being very pragmatic about it and objective. It is a subjective number, to your point, though, right? The question is, what is that number? To me, it's very simple, and I think you're saying the same thing as I always say. It's an amount of money that you never have to work again, right? The problem potentially with your strategy is that we could go into hyperinflation, right? And so the Fed has to keep the US Fed. Well, let me just take a step back. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, right? Do we agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. The world is based on
I constantly say that what happens in US today on the other side of the planet dictates my life in 10 years more than what's happening in my country today. Yep. So absolutely, yes, all our eyes are on US, absolutely.
So the dollar is important to understand. So you don't want the dollar crashing globally. It'd be a major Great Depression globally, right? So the Fed is stuck in a position where it has to keep printing money when it looks like there's about to be a systemic fallout and there could be a crash, right? This happened in 2018, 2020, and I think we're going to see cycles like this repeatedly. And they're going to keep printing and printing and printing to keep the system, at least trying to keep the system from crashing, right? While they do that, they're going to cause asset inflation. We are in an asset inflation. We've been in an asset inflation for over 10 years, right? So you can see this in the US. Michael Saylor talks about this quite a bit, and he articulates it really well. There's $400 trillion of assets globally. $128 trillion is bonds. $18 trillion is negative interest rates. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That money's probably going to come over to Bitcoin at some point. Some of it has been. Mass Mutual had bought some, and Michael Saylor just raised billions of dollars effectively under a 1% interest rate, for crying out loud. I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? With some strike prices and options and stuff like that associated with it. That being said, we are in a position where money printer keeps running in the US, and it will cause inflation. Assets like real estate, stocks, art, any other precious metals, Bitcoin, right? They're all going up, right? The question is, where do you want to park your money? You can't park it in cash. That's dangerous, right? Because you're losing buying power at a rapid rate, right? And over the next 10 or maybe 20 years, if you left let's say you made $1 million and you left $1 million in the bank, typically it would be worth about half of that in 20 years with the typical inflation. I think we're going to see an accelerated inflation. I think you're going to see that it's going to take you 10 years or less to have half the buying power if you just sat in cash. That's dangerous. You could get completely wiped out if the banks go belly up and you can't pull money out of the banks either. They're only going to give you $250,000 in the US back on a deposit account, right? And maybe they don't. Maybe the whole thing blows up. Then what? This is why Bitcoin's really important, because it's self-sovereignty. So you can take your money, you can put it aside, leave it on your Trezor or your ledger, and you're out of the system now, right? You're like, hands are wiped clean. I don't give a shit what they do at this point, right? I got my Bitcoin. So people always talk about, where do you think the price of Bitcoin is going to go? I have a podcast, as you know, we talk about it on my show a little bit. And I always ask these people like Anthony Scaramucci and others, where do you think it's going to go in 10 years? I don't care about this year, next year, 5 years, even. Give me a couple cycles, 2.5, 3 cycles out. And a lot of people think that the price of Bitcoin would be $500,000 to $1 million. Some think it could be a lot more. I think Michael Saylor said that he thinks the price of Bitcoin could go as high as $10 million. I think it could go even higher potentially with hyperinflation. Now, if you take inflation out and you look at the current dollars, there's only so much it can go if you remove inflation, right? Inflation adjusted, yeah, it could only suck up so much of the assets over time, right? You're not going to create new value, right? So real estate, stocks, bonds, art, etc. If you look at the values of those, a large portion of the value of those assets are store of value, right? Because you don't want to sit in cash. People have they've kind of figured that out, right? You can just see asset prices and know that they figured that out. Particularly in the US on real estate, it's rising dramatically, very dramatic over the last year, but it has been rising for 10 years, ever since the 2009 crash, right? And so when you see these things, you say to yourself, well, what is that number? What is your fuck you number? Right? And because if you're thinking it's a monthly income, you're going to need more income in the future with asset prices going up, expenses going up. So cashing out could be dangerous. It'll feel good for a while, but then where do you put it?
Absolutely agree with you. No, absolutely agree with you. But firstly, there is this saying, Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom, right? So 10 million, yeah, sure. In 10 years, 10 million sounds reasonable. In 20 years, I wouldn't be surprised to be at 50 million. It's all about how much trust is being put into the Bitcoin network and where does it suck value from. Rare art, stonks, real estate, gold, everything that we use as store of value right now that should not be store of value. It should be a tool, it should be a commodity, it should be something that you use, that has utility to you, but you use it as store of value. It's something that is give as an example is in London, there is a bunch of flats that are empty in city center, and literally they're like, I don't know, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30% of the flats there are empty, and they're owned by Chinese and Russian people. So why is that? Well, because they're trying to literally have like a pot of money outside of Russia. Let's say, I don't know, they're afraid maybe Putin's gonna do something, I don't know. So they're buying a million, a 2 million, a 3 million flat in city center of London in order to have that property there. And at any given moment, they know they can fly back to London and they have a big pile of money there waiting for them. And it's inflation hedged. you have more inflation, the price of that asset goes up. So I absolutely agree about when you cash out, it's not about cashing out and putting your money in the bank and then trusting the bank with the money and being dependent on the bank. It's about diversifying. So what I meant was like absolutely random number. Let's say I have $1,000 of income a month. I'm a just normal, wage worker, and then I get $1 million in Bitcoin. In my opinion, at that time, it's a good idea to cash out at least 50%, so that's $500,000, and diversify it. Maybe buy a few small flats or something like that. Assets though, assets. Don't put it in the bank. Get assets. Obviously, never get 100% out of crypto because you don't know how much exponentially it's gonna grow in the future. And also the sovereignty word in English, which means that you own it and you're absolutely independent of what Trump does and what your bank does and so on. And also another thing that's actually a big issue in Bulgaria, it's corruption. So I'm personally really afraid if you talk against politicians or something like that, they could press banks and so on to freeze your assets, freeze your accounts. With Bitcoin, they can't do that. And to me, this means that I'm even willing to take extra risk or extra premium with Bitcoin to own my own keys.
So the problem with buying real estate is that real estate could crash down pretty hard over time. We've had a tremendous amount of capital going into it. You will have a store of value. The question is, what will the value be? It will never go to zero, right? There is a utility value to real estate. There's rent, there's cash flows, cap rates, right? And the question is, what is the underlying asset value going to be in the future? That's the question, and I don't have an answer for that. You don't know, right? So there could be an exodus of capital from real estate over the next 20 years moving into Bitcoin, right? There could be saying, I don't want to have capital, 3 houses. I don't need to have 2 extra homes for store value. Let's just buy Bitcoin. It's liquid. If I want to sell it, to your point, I can. I have the optionality. I have the flexibility, the portability. There's so many things about Bitcoin. It makes more sense than having real estate, depending on what's going on in the economy. If you have another pandemic type of situation and forbearance where they say you don't have to pay rent, now you're sitting on a property, it's costing you money, it's a liability. You got property taxes are rising because these local governments are paying for their pensions for their teachers and their cops. And I don't know, is that a smart investment to store your value? Can you carry the asset and the carrying cost on that? Repairs, maintenance, taxes, insurance, etc. when you're not collecting rent might be dangerous. I don't know. You don't have to worry about that with Bitcoin.
Absolutely. I just recently met this person that I was saying, I want to diversify from Bitcoin to real estate. And he said, you're mad. I want to sell my real estate to buy more Bitcoin.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? It's even if you diversify, you have to master that as well. It's with Bitcoin, not everyone, most people that start, they're noobs and they just buy the top. And then they cry when it goes down. And I think it's the same thing with everything. If you want to diversify into real estate, you have to know that sector first, or at least to be profitable. If you don't know it, you can be either lucky or you can lose your money there. It's exactly the same.
Let me throw this at you. What if COVID was as viral as it was, very contagious, right? High viral coefficient, but the death rate was slightly higher, and then the lockdown took longer. What would have happened to real estate? We got lucky.
I can see it already.
I don't think people realize how lucky we got.
Yeah. I can see it already in London. I think offices are being empty. Companies are moving out. And I think in a couple of years, I think it will change the dynamics of London, for example. It's changing already. You don't see as many shops open anymore. You don't see pubs anymore. And I think it's just a downward spiral from now on. I think a lot of people don't want to go back to the office anymore, or even if they do, they don't want to go 5 days a week. They want to go 1 day a week, which means that shops and pubs won't be able to serve. They won't be able to make money. Offices will say, okay, why do we have these big offices if we have people here only 1 day per week and so on, or we can have smaller offices, and things will start to change. And that's, I think we're already seeing that in London and probably in all bigger cities already. It will be just spreading, and anything different can also impact different parts. For example, I think,
and I'll ask you, like, do you think a 1200 PE ratio on Tesla is a very intelligent investment?
Yeah, that's a different story.
I mean, we're getting disconnected from reality in all these assets, right? And some may argue on the other side that are traditional investors, maybe Bitcoin's disconnected from reality because they don't understand Bitcoin and they don't understand what's happening. The scarcity play. The number one thing in Bitcoin is the scarcity, right? You can make more real estate. You can go up, right? You can't go left and right and front and back anymore. They can go higher. They could always create more, right? So it doesn't have true scarcity. Even in the market, as you said, I want to be in Miami or Palm Beach, Florida, or I want to be in Manhattan. And then the pandemic hits and now nobody wants to be in Manhattan, right? Like that is not the case for Bitcoin. From an investment perspective, it is the most protected asset because of its true credible scarcity. You know, you can't, a friend of mine, Jason Williams, wrote the book, Bitcoin, hard money you can't fuck with. It's true, right? It's a great line. You know, real estate, you could fuck with it. You know, stocks, they're fucking with it all the time, right? Everything else is fucked with. Everything, every other asset. The Fed is screwing everything up, right? And at this point, they're just trying to keep the wheels on, right? On the train, right?
So I told you that, you know, I created this channel about like a year ago, and I created literally to lay down my thoughts about Bitcoin. And earlier you said like for people that, you know, about people that don't understand Bitcoin, don't understand like a common thing is from people that don't understand Bitcoin. It's always like, how is it limited to 21 million? Like it's digital, I can copy it. And then they start talking about forks. And when they're a bit more knowledgeable, they start saying, oh, but there is Bitcoin Cash, or but there is Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, or but there is like 9,000 altcoins and so on. And it takes quite a bunch of time to study it, fully, truly understand it, and then you understand why, you know, what Bitcoin actually is and why it has value. So why do you think there is so much resistance in understanding the value of Bitcoin? There is this saying that now it's worse, financially suicidal to not invest at least something in Bitcoin. Like, don't go all in, don't go to 50%, go 1%. Like, I don't know, if your net worth is $1 million, put 10K in. Just in case, you know, just in case, for diversification's sake. And people still don't do it. It's not just about not doing it. They're aggressive about it. I call them, I don't know how to translate in English. In Bulgarian, uzubenite no coineri, high five to all Bulgarians. So it means like the hating no coiners, you know, like no coiners, but they're not just no coiners. They're hateful, like, you know, they have this thing here around their mouth, they're ready to kill you because they hate Bitcoin so much. Like, I don't know what is this hate coming from. Anyway, so what do you think about it, about the people who don't understand Bitcoin? Why is that? Why are they hating on it? And the other part, the people who actually, let's say they start dipping their toes in crypto, but they're like, oh, Bitcoin's really old and so on. This other shitcoin, that's the future of crypto and that's going to be the global reserve currency.
Yeah, so I think what it is the Warren Buffetts of the world, rat poison, right? Like these types, they missed it. He doesn't think about it. What technology has he ever invested in? He doesn't, right? He invests in railroads and sees candy and insurance companies and like time-tested businesses that provide cash flow. Like he says, you should buy a stock, assuming that the stock market could shut down and not be open again. Would you still want to own that stock? So he thinks about cash flow. He thinks about yield, right? Not only always, right? I mean, but by and large, I mean, even Apple, he's got a large position. The largest position, I believe, of anything he's not wholly owned is Apple. And I don't believe it was his decision initially to do that. One of his team members brought it to him, but obviously he leaned into it and he said yes, and he approved it, and he's been leaning into it. Loves Apple because he can understand Apple. They make a physical product and he gets it. He doesn't use it, by the way, but he understands it, right? He understands the ecosystem around it. It's created an entire ecosystem, right? He's missed this. So he's butthurt, to be honest with you. That's really what it is, right? And you see that a lot with traditional investors. But the smart ones are coming around, like Ray Dalio, Paul Tudor Jones, and others. They have come around on Bitcoin and said, you can't not own it at this point, right? Like, to your point, you got to have some exposure to it, right? I think no matter who you are, the prudent thing to do is to have some exposure. 1 to 5%, I think, is reasonable for most people. And if you're afraid the price is going to crash, which it just did, but let's just say it crashes even further from here, another 50%, there's no reason why it can't. Anything can happen. Then just dollar cost average into it over the next 5 years. Say I want to put 5% in, I'm going to put 1% in, I'm going to do it on a monthly or weekly basis and just start buying it and just do that for the next 60 months. Just keep doing it. If the prices go down, you get a nice price on a dollar cost average down, and you can lean in as it drops on the dips. And the price goes up, you dollar cost average on the way up. And so you paid slightly more. That's okay. At least you didn't worry about that crash, right? You'll get through the cycle. You go into the next cycle in a 5-year. We're 1 year into this cycle, right? There's only 3 years left. So you'll be 2 years into the next cycle and you'll be fully bought in at that point. I think you should be protected if you do that. If you look at the history of Bitcoin, doesn't necessarily mean that the past has an indication that the future will be the same. But if you want to believe that the past if you look at the stock to flow from Plan B, right? If you believe that and you think that's gonna, then you should be able to get through this cycle by dollar cost averaging over the next 5 years, and you should be protected on that. And it will protect your net worth, because you put 5% into Bitcoin. That 5% will probably be 99% of your net worth over the next 10 years, right? And I actually believe that some of the other assets like stocks and real estates might actually not perform so well moving forward. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't necessarily own it, but you should have some exposure to Bitcoin.
Okay. During this conversation, I really want to stay away from the price, but let's dip into that conversation just for a second. So we crashed from 60K down to 30K. There's this talk about Wyckoff distribution at the top, Wyckoff accumulation at the moment. There is talk about coordinated, maybe global attack, maybe. But even though it sounds weird to me, China in this and this and this, everyone to start fighting around it. At the same time, we have real things happening, meaning China really kicked off all the miners. We had the freaking Pope tweeting about Bitcoin that at the minute's notice it has to be shut down because it's boiling the oceans and so on. And according, I'm following closely everything that Willy Woo and Plan B says, and Plan B said that to him, if by the end of the year we haven't reached 100K, stock to flow would be broken. And he draws, these dots, and he gave a worst case prediction that in order for the stock to flow model to not be broken, we have to be next month, I don't know, what was it, like 47K, then by September end 43K, and then like 60 something, and then by December 103K or whatever it was, but something like that. And so what's your opinion? This is just an opinion, this is not financial advice and so on. What's your opinion? Like, firstly, did we top out for this cycle? And by a cycle, I mean halving to halving. Is 64K going to be the top price between the halving 2020 and the halving 2024? Firstly. And secondly, if not, most probably you're going to say no. If not, do you have any expectations of the prices? The general consensus is 100 to 300K, but I feel like this general consensus was from too far way back. And having in mind the trillions that have been printed by the Fed and the whole craziness and the whole institution buying, and Michael Saylor, who literally was like a beacon of light in the crypto community, like holy moly, how much work he's done with the Bitcoin for corporations, with the El Salvador news and everything else, I really feel like at 100 to 300K price prediction has to be pumped to 200, 400 or something like that.
So what do I think of stock to flow analysis with Plan B? Is that what the question is? Yeah.
That, and did we top out, and do you have any prediction?
On the second part of that question, did we top out and do I have a prediction? I can't say, and I don't have an intelligent answer for either of those. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, right? A lot of my friends who know more than me about this will say that we're going to 300,000 or something in the cycle. I don't know. Who knows? I don't really care, actually, because I just know over time it has to go up because there will be increasing amounts of demand for Bitcoin, and there'll be less and less inventory available. Supply will be less, demand will be higher, price has to go up, number will go up, right? Number go up technology. But the question is when and what price and when. And at that part, I can't tell you. Will stock to flow break in this cycle? Maybe. Are we at the top at 64 for this cycle? Maybe. I don't think so. I think we're going to get close to 100,000. I think we're going to revert back for a crash. That's what I think. I was thinking maybe it'd be like we'd pass 100 and go to like 150, maybe to closer to 2 and then revert. But what I saw with the 64 pull back, I think people try to front run what they believe is a top, right? And they also try to front run what they believe is a bottom. So when you look at technical analysis or you look at on-chain analytics and stuff like that, and you start to look and try to figure out what the prices are, it's a coin toss, because what you're looking at and what everybody understands is like technical analysis is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It happens because we believe it will happen. There's no reason otherwise, right? But it won't actually happen because people like me or you will say, well, everybody thinks it's going to go here, so I'm going to buy it now when it's dropping, right? And so it never gets to where it's supposed to get to on the bottom. So I think the same thing happens on the top. So if there's a lot of people that say, man, I want my fuck you money, I'll do it at 100,000. Well, if everybody's going to do it at 100,000, they all probably think like me, fuck it, I'm selling it at 90,000. So if enough people do that, you never get to the 100, right? So it doesn't mean that you never get there. And this is the funny thing about it. Like, people are front running and selling, and then what are they doing? They're paying tax after they sell, then they're investing it in what? Where are you putting it, right? And the reason why they do that is they're trying to be market timers. The old saying is, don't be a market timer. It's not about market timing, it's about time in the market. Just buy it and hold it. Unless you're in a situation where you don't have to pay taxes, you got to really have a real crash when you sell that top to be able to get more coins on the way down after tax. That's the key. Unless you're not fully invested, in which case, why are you selling it at all? Just buy more with the cash you still have.
Yep, absolutely. And I laughed about the technical analysis. Literally, this is what I say. It's like the first technology in human race that allows people to not meditate, but what was the, to have mind connection around the world all together, think exactly the same thing and do exactly the same thing just because we can get the charts and expecting the same thing to happen. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's nothing more.
Exactly. And, but you can't ignore it because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I know.
A lot of my Bitcoin Maxi friends, it's bullshit, and they draw like a dick and balls or something. And I'm like, come on, guys. You joke around about it, like, I can make any line. I can put a whole bunch of lines on a chart. And I'm like, you can make up any line you want, but unless 10 million other people are actually agreeing with your line, the line doesn't matter, right? Yep. So, and I'm not saying you should be making investment decisions based on technical analysis. I think people should understand technical analysis as a long-term hodler so that when they get in and it's their first cycle and it pulls back on them like it did in the last cycle, was my first cycle in 2017, it pulled back. Understanding charts is important because you understand where you think the bottom will be, and then it will revert, and then when it goes back, you say, oh yeah, it's exactly what I thought. Roughly speaking, it's kind of close. It didn't go outside of the context of what you expected. Happiness is about managing your expectations in life, whether it's with your partner, whether it's in finance, your kids, I don't care what it is, right? Understanding where you think things are going and then seeing them kind of go where you thought keeps you comfortable. When you get uncomfortable because you're too much size into the investment and it's now going against what you believe, that's when you can wreck yourself and sell. And in the end, it will always go up. We believe that. So selling is a shame, right? But you sell it, you take the loss, and then it reverts and goes back, and then you're buying it back, and then you're getting less coins, right? And this happens to a lot of people in stocks and now in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, I guess.
Absolutely. I just noticed, I don't know why this literally happens for the first time. The application that we're using for the stream literally just said that the call is gonna end in 5 minutes, and I really don't understand why. Like they're usually unlimited, and I feel like, did they change the terms of service or something? And now it says that the call is gonna end in 5 minutes, so I'm not sure about that. We might have some technical difficulties and might need to
you have a free plan, it's saying. I see it here, free plan.
Yeah, but it always works, Yeah, exactly. So this is the first time it gives me that notice though. Like, I'm not sure why. I would expect that they've changed recently their terms of service, and I think this is what's happening. So we might need to restart it or something. Like, I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway, so the next topic I have here that I would really like to go with you with is the Bitcoin outcome. So meaning that I personally see it as a revolution, technological revolution that would give humanity like a new way to own their property and be able to exchange value. And when people hear that it's a peer-to-peer and then they say, but it's not because it goes through miners and so on, it's not about that. It's about the fact that only the person who owns the keys can decide to make a transaction. That's the peer-to-peer part. I send to you because I said so, because I want so, and I don't need the permission from a third party, meaning a bank and so on, that actually custodies for me my value. Anyway, so the way I see it is that long-term, 50 years, Bitcoin, if it continues to grow, it's literally going to suck value from everything that we talked about earlier, art, gold, real estate, stonks, and so on. So I really see that's as only binary outcome of the future of Bitcoin. Either it's going to be 100 trillion market cap, or it's going to go down to zero. What do you think about that?
That's a pretty binary way to think about it. Maybe that's right. I don't have an answer for that either. You're asking me a lot of questions I don't have great answers for. I'm no expert at this, to be honest with you. Like, so I couldn't tell you if it's going to go to zero. I don't think that's going to happen, right? The only thing that would ever have that thing go to zero, or it'll never go to zero. I can assure you that it'll actually never go to zero. Even if it got hacked somehow, there's somebody willing to buy it at the lowest price. It's like we said before, they're going to front run. People have their limit orders in at 10 cents, $1, $100. It's never going to happen, right? So there is a floor, right? There's a floor. I don't see that happening. And folks like Max Kaiser and Tim Draper and the Winklevoss twins and the largest holders of Bitcoin. I forget what the top one is. Not whale, but they're humpbacks, I think, right? So like they're never selling, right? They're already rich. It doesn't matter. Like, why would I sell it? Right. So they have no urgency. They have no fear. It's not going to happen. So there's a floor at some point, I think. Right. And what was the other question? I'm sorry, you're asking about the real estate transactions within blockchain. Is that what you're asking me?
No. I'm just saying. No, the question is just about the future. Like, do you see a future where it hits zero? Do you see a future where it hits 100 trillion? And do you agree with me that it's a binary either or with the idea again having in mind the Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom?
It hasn't topped because fiat hasn't bottomed. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I would say that's probably true because when the dollar crashes, Bitcoin's going to go through the roof, and there's a transition. Meeting's going to end shortly, by the way. So I'm not sure if you want to reconnect. What do you got here? I'm just going to stop talking until you figure that out. Is that okay?
Yes. The meeting will end shortly, it says. So I really don't understand what's happening. Just a second. Let me figure it out. Okay, I'm going to refresh and see what happens. Okay, I refreshed and everything's exactly the same. I refreshed and everything's exactly the same, so nothing. So Alesh, can you please can you share me your room link?
Yeah, you there?
Just a second, yeah.
I'll go on.
So Alesh is going to share me his room link, yeah, and you're just going to move on to his room. I really don't know why this happened. Yep. Много странно. Не мога да разбера, защото бяхме 3 човека ли. Но ние сме правили подкасти преди това с 3 човека. Okay, so получих линк до стая. Окей, готови сме. Hey, so yeah, I have no idea why would it all of a sudden do that, but I would imagine that they just changed their terms of service and they changed it that the free ones are limited to just 45 minutes of conversation instead of unlimited time. But anyway, let me check the background of this. Hey, hello. So let's move on to the next topic then. We have 45 minutes now, we know. So I actually have a bunch of questions from my audience. So I would suggest let's go through them so they're not mad at me after that we haven't went through their questions. The first one actually is about investment in companies. And you said that you invested in 100 businesses or something, didn't you? Like, holy moly, that's a lot.
Yes, I did. So you want to know my thesis on how I do that?
Yeah. So Petya asks, what European or Asian companies, startups are you interested into? Are there any Bulgarian ones? And what do you see, good signs and bad signs about a business? Like, how do you evaluate it? What do you have, like a general 1, 2, 3 checks to do for every single company before you invest into?
Yeah, it's subjective, I guess. It's the way I do it. So it's simple. I meet with a team, I evaluate the people. From there, I look and I say, like, well, is this a business that's up, it's running? Does it have any traction? If it has traction, we analyze the traction. If it doesn't have any traction, then it's about the team. and it's about the market size, right? And I know it sounds weird, but I gotta have a feeling about the people that I'm investing in at that point, right? I look at those people and I say, one of the things I'll evaluate is like, what have they done previously? Did they build companies and sold them or scaled them and maybe had some bad luck and it went bankrupt or something happened, but they figured out how to get to scale, or they worked on worked at Google or Facebook or somewhere where they worked on scalable projects. By the way, I'm a technology investor, so I won't invest in restaurants and things like that. I invest in tech, right? So that's kind of the lens that I look at it through. From there, I look at the idea and I say, is it differentiated? Do they have a market plan that I believe can scale massively? Is it a blitz scaling opportunity where the more money you throw at it, the bigger we can get? Just keep repeating that flywheel. And then once you get to that point where you're scaling, is it different? Is it differentiated? Is it scaling? Is it defensible? Can people copy you? What are the barriers to exit for the users? What are the barriers to entry, right? For new competitors trying to copy you? Is it expensive? Do you have something proprietary that they can't copy? Do you have patents? Like all these things, it's very holistic. You look at all of this when you make an investment, and you just have a deal by deal basis. You just do that.
How much allocation do you do then? Do you buy like 20-30% of the company or what?
No, it just depends on where you're at. Like, so early stage, mid stage, late stage. And at the earliest stages, the valuations of these companies, 2 kids coming out of Stanford University with a laptop, getting a $5 million valuation these days. It's crazy. Thanks, Fed. Low interest rates, right? You can credit that to the Fed. So if you're a kid coming out of college right now, you have no idea, and the funny thing is they'll argue about valuation. Some of these kids would be like, I'm like, that seems kind of odd. Like, what do you mean? That's low, 5 million. I'm like, 5 million. I sold my company for $33 million and we were doing $25 million in revenue. You have no revenue. You have an idea. So they don't realize it's so funny. Like, they're so young. They didn't go through the cycles. I went through the 2000 crash. I went through the 2009 crash. Right. And then the 2018 kind of dipped, but it didn't really affect the private markets. But they haven't had that experience. They're like 19, 22 years old, and they're like, I'm totally justified getting a $5-6 million valuation with no traction. It's like, okay. But that's kind of where the market's at these days. So you're asking what percentage allocation do I get? It depends on the dollars you're going to put in relative to whatever, denominating into the valuation of the company. So my typical check size is anywhere between 25,000 to 100, maybe 200,000, somewhere in that range.
I see. Okay, so I know what I'm doing. I'm after I cash out from Bitcoin, I'm going to the States and opening a bunch of companies, sell them 5 million each.
Yeah, exactly. Just a bunch of ideas. You don't
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Underground cars, flying cars, teleporting cars.
You can thank Jay Powell and Bernanke for that.
Yeah.
Janet Yellen, all of them.
So AI, actually, I watch, a lot of. Have you read the books of Harari? What was his first name? I can't remember. 21 Lessons for 21st Century. Do you know that book?
No.
It's a 2 years old, something like it's quite new. Just a second. Let me just Google Harari author just to see his first name. He's Yuval Noah Harari. Does it ring a bell or not at all? Ring a bell or not at all? Yuval Noah Harari. Like a 40 years old guy, a bit bald. He's like a thinker or something, like he's an author. He's a professor also somewhere. Anyway, he has this book. He has Homo Sapiens, Homo Deus, and also these are his first 2 books. And now the third one is 21 Lessons for 21st Century. And in that book, he says he starts the book with if you're a homeless person or if you're a refugee being on a boat and you're trying to get to shore, this book is not for you. You have very pressing issues right now. You have to deal with them. But if you're comfortable at home watching TV and so on, regardless if you're poor or rich, you have to read this book. And in this book, he talks about things that if you're really into tech, you know about anyway. But if you're not that interested, you find out, a lot of new things for you. So he talks about AI, about pretty much the GDP 2 or whatever it's called, the Google AI bot that now can read text and can answer questions about the text and so on. There's even now bot that can write freaking code. So Alesh, goodbye to our careers, I guess. So there is also the breakthrough in video games that some people dismiss as, it's video games. No, video games are extremely complex to play. And I'm talking about real-time strategy games or mobile games like Dota. There is a lot of, team play and like in poker, there's a lot of bluffing to do and so on. Like it's very complex games, and there is now these bots that are like world-class players. And then he talks about gene editing and about how with gene sequencing and reading the genes of embryos, I think it's called, you know, like babies anyway, the super rich could potentially be able to like create 100 embryos or 1,000 or 10,000 embryos, and then decide like, okay, so this one has very high chance of this disease or that disease, burn them. And out of which all 1,000 or 10,000, you get these 5, you know, the best ones, and you're thinking, okay, this one has best chance for blue hair, not blue hair, blue eyes. This one is to be black hair and not yellow, and so on. So you choose the baby by design instead of just getting a random baby, and again with the best genes, but again the richest people would have access to that. And then he talks about, I really love, there is this quote that's just amazing, it stuck to me. He's saying how in the past 50 years people have been complaining because they're being exploited, but in the next 50 years something much worse is awaiting for them. It's irrelevance. They're just not needed. They're inefficient because machines and AI are going to do their job much better than them, and it's going to cost a fraction of what they would cost to be employed. So what's your thoughts on the next, I don't know, like 10, 20, 30 years about technology development in all of these possible areas?
Where's it going, right? Yeah, don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of AI, to your point, right? You're going to see a lot of that. And machine learning, right? There's no question about it. I mean, the IBM Watson was really interesting, right? And like you said, with Google and some others, it's amazing what the companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, I mean, they have war chests like you can't even imagine, right? Valuations in the trillions of dollars now, something I would have never fathomed 15 years ago. I remember 15 plus years ago, my second company, I had sold it to another company, and the guy who was running the company, his name was Aaron. He was the founder of Bolt.com, was the first teen social network. It was the first social network on the internet, 1996. And I remember him telling me back about 15 years ago, this is funny to hear this now. He's like, we were talking about, I didn't know a lot about stocks back then. I was so focused on what I was doing, but he was teaching me and some other people around me that were older were kind of telling me stuff. And I remember at the time, he said to me, you know, that someday they believe that the Dow will be like 40,000. This is in our lifetime. He's like, someday in our lifetime. It's like our lifetime. It's like been like 15 years and we're almost there. What is this guy talking about? We're probably gonna have 100,000 Dow in our lifetime with inflation and the way the money printing is gone. So to predict where things are going, I think whatever you think it is probably going to be more and faster, right? Because the evolution, the compound effect. When I started getting into tech, there wasn't that many people in tech, relatively speaking, for the planet. You know, everybody on the planet is well aware of tech today. It's not this crazy idea like, oh, that internet thing, maybe that'll work out. I mean, needs to say this shit on TV. Is crazy. The same stuff they're talking about today on Bitcoin is exactly how they talked about the overall internet in 1990s. If you go back, and you could even find it on YouTube, you will see on the Today Show, Katie Couric and I'm trying to remember the other guys, Al Roker and them, they were sitting there on TV. It's a very famous clip now. And they were like, what is this internet thing anyway? Like this .com thing, or what is that? Is it com? How do you say it?
Yeah.
Like, this is the shit they were saying.
You can make audio call. You can make audio call. Hello, have you heard of the phone? Like you can stream audio. Have you heard of radio and so on? Yeah, I know the clip. Yeah, crazy.
And the thing about tech too, if you think about like what's Twitter? Twitter is a buddy away message on AOL Instant Messenger. That's all it is, right? If you think about the most simplest ideas that have hit scale, they've already been done. We're not really inventing anything new. We're just changing the form and slight nuances to these things. Some of the technology that's coming out is definitely changing some stuff, but it's really just building on top of things. It's iteration and compound evolution is really what it is. So the more bright minds throughout the world that get into technology and start to pursue these endeavors, you're going to see amazing things come out of that faster than I think we expect. So I think we're going to see autonomous cars driving around by themselves. I actually believe in our lifetime, it will be illegal to drive a gasoline car. And I actually believe by the time, if I live long enough, I don't think you'll be allowed to drive any car. I think it'll be banned. They're coming for your privacy, the government. They're trying to control everything. And to be able to have cars that are automated, they can probably control whether or not you can leave if you're trying to run. If you want to get in a car and you have explosives on you or drugs, or they can lock the car and wait for the cops to come get you, right? Like all this shit is coming in our lifetime, in my opinion. Now, maybe it sounds a little conspiratory, but I believe that's the game here. and we're giving it away, right? George, or Orwellian kind of stuff that we see, that we feared, the 1984 thing, right? Where we're giving up so much privacy. Someday they might have cameras. There's literally a camera on every street corner in America today, and if you go in the city, it's everywhere. Most people have a Ring doorbell today, which is run by Amazon. So Amazon knows who's coming and going from your house at all times. They're listening to you on your Alexas. They know what you're talking about. They're listening to you on your phones. The NSA can listen to you at any time, and we're paying them to do that to us. They're not sneaking it. They're telling us with the Patriot Act in the US, they have every right to listen to everything and peruse through your data and information. It's totally legal for the government to do. And we're aware of it, and yet we're paying them to do it.
Imagine trying to explain that to yourself 20 years ago.
Never would have believed it. Never would have believed it, right?
Yeah.
Never. You go back to when he wrote 1984, right?
Yeah.
He would have believed that this would have happened. I think he would have thought the government would have been nefarious in how they're doing it. They're doing it wide open in the public, and we're inviting them in, and then we're paying another company for the right for the government to look through peer review through their technology to track us. It's astonishing when you think about it from that perspective, actually, right? So you're asking, where's technology going to go? It's going to be more than you think, and it's going to be faster, and it's going to have way more implications on your life than I think we anticipate.
And it already has. I mean, if you look at how much power social media has, how much control, how they can dictate certain narratives, I guess. Yeah. It's already showing, like, it's way beyond like Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube. It's way beyond just a platform for information. They can bend reality within those platforms, I think.
That's correct. And you guys are technical people, so you can understand and appreciate data is everything. So whatever you think you're going to do in the next week, the government already can anticipate what you're most likely going to do. It's a probabilistic outcome of what your past behaviors are, what you're talking about, what you're perusing around on the internet, where you're moving around with your Easy Pass, and they can see when you're going on the parkways and where you're located, and they can see your GPS on your phone everywhere you're going. They know who you're with. They know the people you're surrounded with. You are the average of the 5 people around you. That is obvious for everybody. And they know pretty much what your next move might be, right? Is that good? I don't know. I would previously, 20 years ago, said hell no. But at the advent of terrorists today, maybe we need to do that. I don't know. At least for some period of time. That sounds crazy because there's a lot of bad that can come of this, right? When you really think about it. But it is a reality. So it doesn't make a difference what our opinions are. This is where we are, and I don't see it going the other way. It's only going to exasperate to this movement.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it was exactly again in that book, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. I highly recommend it. It's an Audible. You can just listen it at 2x speed. You're going to go through it in like 5 hours. He talked about, because we mentioned the word terrorism, he said about how terrorists usually are the weaker ones, right? They have like the smaller amount of money, smaller amount of people with them and so on. So what they do, they don't head-on attack. They just do something small. Like they'll kill 10 people. Like 10 people out of like, I don't know, 10 million is nothing. But because of the effect of that, because of all the coverage from the news and so on, regulators, lawmakers are forced to act on it, politicians are forced to act on it, and they do some stupid law that actually is the goal of the terrorists. They know they cannot take over the country, but they know they can force the country to change some laws, to change this, to change that, in order to accomplish their goals in a different way.
Well, they might have already accomplished everything they wanted to accomplish, which is we lost our freedoms in America, right? So your civil rights. So they're taking that away, out of your point, out of the fear of more of this. And frankly, it could get worse. You're saying 10 people, say it's 3,000, I think was the Trade Center, right? They could take out a whole city if they get their hands on the right equipment, right? I mean, you could lose millions of people, right? New York City, if you, I don't know how you do it, but if you took out New York City, that's like 8-9 million people like that. And that would shake up the entire world economically and otherwise. Fear, travel, everything would just change instantaneously, right? So the government needs to make sure that doesn't happen. And not just our government, the whole world needs to make sure that doesn't happen to our government in here. Because again, it's back to the world reserve currency, and it's everything is connected to the US dollar. Everything's connected to the US economy. If you disrupt that, which is what terrorists would like to do because they want to see the whole system go away. But most of the world does not want to see that happen because it would completely disrupt the world would be going into a Great Depression globally if something like this happens.
And do you think that the government can go too far and reach a point when the people start saying, okay, this is too far, we have to go back? Or do you think they can just slowly push it more and more?
I think they're going to slowly push it, and I think they have They have something that they didn't have 30, 40 years ago, which is the internet. And we have these things today where we're distracted constantly. We're playing video games. We're on social media. We're watching Netflix, where there's all this technology that's distracting us. By the way, it's like this all the time. It takes times of panic where people start to rise up, though. But you're losing all this stuff because they're keeping us in a homo status rather, where we're feeling comfortable and content all the time, right? But you're really not. But you're distracted, right? And then when there's an opportunity like 2020 happened, right, with COVID, that's when you start to see the riots, because then people don't have the basic needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Basic needs at the bottom. If you take that away from people, then they revolt, right?
Yeah. And just trying to go back to crypto, we're looking at in the future and everything. What do you think about Ethereum compared to Bitcoin? Because we talked only about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most scarce thing, but Ethereum is touching so many other aspects, and it's also the second biggest crypto. I mean, do you have any opinion on that? What do you think about it?
I don't think it's a store of value. It's the best way I can put it. I don't think it's going away neither. So I think it's here. It's a tech that people are playing around with, but it doesn't have the true scarcity. In fact, they make more of it all the time, right? So, and you could argue with me on this if you want, and I don't really want to have that argument, but Bitcoin is true scarcity, true credible scarcity. 21 million Bitcoin, never going to have more unless more than 50% agree. And I don't see that happening as you have more and more and more people added to the network, the miners and what have you, right? So I don't believe that's going to happen. Ethereum, there's this whole DApp kind of environment, and it's just like, to me, it's like another layer of the web. Like if you're playing around with a game or an app or something like that, there's going to be people that want to play in that, and now there's NFTs and other things, right? There's going to always be people that want to play around with this stuff. So I don't see it going away. I don't think it's going to overtake. See, there's some people that are speculating that, like, Doge or the Moon coin or some other bullshit shitcoin, right? Like all these people there's a unit bias that comes into play here. Sorry, guys. Buddy, I'm on a phone call, bud. My son. Sorry. What happened to karate? You cut wood? Whoa, my son broke wood today, karate.
Wow.
That's so cool, bud. Give me a kissy. I see you later. I'll be up in a minute. Sorry, guys.
Bless him.
That's what it's all about, just so you know.
Yeah.
I'll see you in a bit, Jace. What was I saying? Sorry about that.
Ethereum.
You were talking about shitcoins, Shiba Inu, SafeMoon, and so on.
That's right. So at the end of the day, Bitcoin is going to be your true scarcity. It's the true credible scarcity. None of these other coins are like that. And there's also a layer of the decentralization of Bitcoin that they don't have, right? And so for those two reasons, I don't believe that it will ever be where true capital is going to want to go to store its value. So if you look at like the real institutional money that's moving into this, and that's going to continue to move into this in a big way over the next 5 years, they're not going to buy Doge. They're not going to buy Ethereum. I don't believe that that's going to happen. You don't see that happening now. And as the asset class grows to $1, $2, $3 trillion in Bitcoin, you're going to stick with that, right? That's how they're going to say, I want to know who the winner is. I'm happy to just stay with the winner. Michael Saylor just talked about this on a podcast I just saw the other day, and I'm going to screw up what he said, but he said something along the lines about, what it really comes down to is the risk reward asymmetric bet, right? Mm-hmm. I'm willing to put $100 in, just make up a number, $1, whatever, $100 in, and it can go to zero. But the opportunity is that it might go 10 to 50x. That's a good bet, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to make an investment, that's a really nice asymmetric upside chance that you should take. I don't see that with these other coins, right? They're not large enough in market cap size for real money to be coming in. And at the end of the day, this is a monetary network that has network externality, unlike a social network where it's the number of participants. In a social network like Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, etc., Clubhouse, right? Those are about the number of people that go in it. Bitcoin is not about the number of people that go in it. It's about the amount of money that goes into it. So every dollar is considered like a node almost, right? And so we have 650 million of them right now. But the difference is you can get another individual that comes in. Let's say Bill Gates decided, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin, right? And he does what you guys are suggesting, and he puts in like 1% of his net worth. It's a big number. And that's a lot of new participants that just entered with one human being because he brought his participants with him. It's his money, right? Yeah. He could bring in 10, 20, $50 billion if he wanted to, like that. I think he would never do something like that, but you never know. He might put in $1 billion, right? Because he says, the landscape with inflation and hyperinflation potentially, we should push some chips in, right? And as that money starts to move in, and then Zuckerberg does it, and maybe, you get more billionaires that do it. Those billionaires coming in are important for the monetary network. And this is why Michael Saylor had his event earlier this year trying to get corporations to buy into Bitcoin, because it's not about the plebs coming in. You should do that to front run all of them, because it takes time for them to come in. They got to get their board approval. They got to get an investment committee approval. It takes them time to set this up. It also takes time to purchase it, because you put all that money in at once, it's going to push the price up too much on yourself. So you got to buy it in slowly, right? You got to dollar cost average yourself in. They have to do this through like dark pools and stuff too, so people can't see it's happening, right? That's why the individual should be getting in now at these prices. In fact, this is like a godsend that it's down in the 30,000s, because it should probably be closer to 100,000 right now, right? But we've had some economic conditions and some things that happen with energy and all this other stuff, the FUD, right, that pushed the price down. It's a buying opportunity for people right now. I've been buying. I bought it at 29,000. I bought it at 30,000. These are great opportunities to buy. People should buy it even now. 32,000, I think it was today. It's like these are great prices that when it's 200,000, 500,000, $1 million, you'd be like, why did I give a shit about $2,000 per coin? Oh my God, I missed it. Don't miss it. Because the real money's going to come in. They don't give a shit what the price is. They're just here to store the value. And they don't have a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year time horizon, right? Their time preference is not like the same as yours. Their time preference is 5 years or 10 years. So if you could go out and borrow capital, as an example, Michael Saylor, he borrows billions of dollars for an average cost under, an average interest rate under 1%, right? And what does he do? He goes and buys Bitcoin because he says in 10 years, I will have to pay 1% on that capital annually. And I just have to make the bet that I think that Bitcoin will go up more than 1% on average per year over the next 10 years. Well, over the last 10 years, it's gone up like 118%. At one point it was 190%, but I think it's a little bit lower right now because of the current price. But, I think it's a pretty good bet. Now, could he be wrong? I guess. I don't think he's wrong. And he certainly doesn't think he's wrong. And the people giving him the money obviously don't think he's wrong, or they wouldn't be writing him checks for billions of dollars at less than 1% interest rate, right? So they obviously believe Bitcoin's going to go up. He believes it's going to go up. Who the fuck are you that you don't believe it's going to go up? That's what you should be asking yourself, right? Like, if all this money's moving in here and they're taking these kind of bets, why do you think they're doing that? What are they seeing that you're not seeing? Who are they talking to that you're not talking to? Who has Michael been talking to about bringing them up the curve like he did with Elon Musk and others? And he's having private conversations. What feedback is he getting that's giving him the confidence to go out and raise billions of dollars after having those conversations to buy more Bitcoin? You should ask yourself that.
Exactly. I think he had that presentation, I think in February this year.
Yes.
I think there were like thousands of 1,000 participants. So some people are now talking, that's been more than half a year ago. And where are all these people? Where are all these companies?
So that is interesting. And I think you're going to see Q2 earnings in July, right? We're going to start seeing these earnings calls, and let's see, has anybody bought anything? Chances are maybe not, because we had a retracement. So the investment committees might've got jaded. I don't know. What if it goes lower? Let's just wait and see. That might have happened. They might've been in the process of getting on board, and then this happens, and it freaks them out because they're traditionalists, and they're like, no. Whoa, we got to see what's going to go on. What if it drops another 50%? That's career risk for them. So they want to know that it's not going to do that. The best time to really lean into Bitcoin would be during a bear market. I don't think we're quite there yet. So if I were on investment committee, I'd say, can we wait till, if you look at the cycles, it looks like there's a pattern here. It's all about pattern recognition. Let's kind of wait and see. That would be the prudent thing to do as a public company board member or CEO. I think that's probably what you're probably going to see, is that they're going to start buying next year when we start to go into a bear market. That's my guess.
Yeah. And do you think that could have an impact? Because usually, traditionally, after the bull year, the Bitcoin drops usually 80 to 85%. Do you think that can have an impact on it? It will be less of a drop, less of a fall?
Well, it drops 80% from the high. And I'm just trying to pull something up here real fast. Just give me 1 second. So where are we at? 64, right? Was the high? Am I correct? Yeah. So let's just do some math here. 64, and where are we at today? 32, and that's a 50. It's exactly. I should have done that in my head. It's a 50% drop, right? And so then the real question is 64 to make this thing drop, if that was the top, the bottom would then be like 13,000, right? Yeah. So if that were the top, that could be your bottom, right? Some people think that if you look at the charts on the TA perspective, if you look at,
usually
it went down to 28,800, I think, and it bounced, right? Because 28 is a support level. And if it broke through that, the next number was like 25, 22. And if it goes through that, then you're looking at like mid-teens, high teens, right? Yeah. Again, what I was saying earlier is you're going to see people that probably front run that. So I don't think you're actually going to see that happen. I think you're going to see, like I did, I came in at 29. Sailor came in right around the time. Remember, he raised money and he just bought. I don't forget what his price was. It was higher than mine. I think it was like 32 or maybe 31. I forget. What was it?
It was even 36.
30. Okay. Was it recently 36? Okay. The last purchase. Yeah. He was much higher.
500 million. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't say it was concerning, right? When I say this, but it was interesting to see that he put that in and then the market just went right below his, just crashed right through him. But he doesn't care. Again, the point is he bought that. That one was a little bit higher interest rate on that particular raise because of what was happening at that moment. But he went out, raised money, paying, he's got a cost of capital on that. And he believes that Bitcoin over the next 10 years is going to outperform what he's paying on the interest rate. That's got to give you some level of understanding and comfort to what he's believing, right? Whether or not you believe that is a different story. And you got to have your own framework as to why you believe Bitcoin is the real true credible scarcity versus all these other shitcoins, you know? And you don't see Michael Saylor raising money to buy something else to diversify. He's not buying some Ethereum. Maybe she had 10% Ethereum. What if I'm wrong? He's not wrong.
And he has a proven track record. Like he's
a rocket scientist. Went to MIT. He's smarter than me.
Yeah, he's not a stupid guy. He's definitely not a stupid guy.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You made me really happy like 5 minutes ago because when you were talking about the market and Michael Saylor and so on, because you said so many things that I'm constantly saying on my streams, and just, you know, it gives me the validation that you completely independent entity thinks in a very similar way to what I'm saying about Michael Saylor. Exactly that. In my opinion, he's one of the most knowledgeable person on crypto right now. Not about he understands perfectly Bitcoin and everything, but he has now the whole world of CEOs, CFOs, and so on would contact him on the topic of how do we put portion of our company reserves on the Bitcoin on that balance sheet. He's the person you go to if you ask that. Also, you know, with the Bitcoin for Corporations conference, he made the playbook, and this is why we're seeing these massive withdrawals from Coinbase. Literally, the moment Coinbase is known as like the exchange that all the institutions go to. Literally, and last thing about the price dipping, I was gonna say that. Usually, whenever we break the previous all-time high, so in 2017, once we broke the 1200, we never went below it. And therefore, the other interesting thing is that the bear market in 2017, 2018, it was 3K was the bottom, which was like 3x the previous all-time high. So in my opinion, what I do anticipate is that the next bear market, which is going to start, let's say 2022, it might start 2023, I expect that the bottom is going to be like 60K. And just recently, I said that if you dollar cost average during this bull market and you get 60K as an average price, you haven't done that bad. It would be like equal to 2017 buying average price of 3,000. Like that's really not a bad price to enter, having in mind that the next bear market is 3K.
You know who Lynn Alden is, right?
The lady with the black hair, yeah. Yep, very smart, so, extremely sharp.
Yes, she wrote a tweet on June 28th. I just wanted to pull it up. Bears focusing on Tether's impact on Bitcoin over the past year would have been probably done better to focus on the grayscale neutral arbitrage trade instead. And when she talked about when new competition resulted in the market trading away from GBTC's premium to NAV, the biggest Bitcoin buyer stopped buying. Basically, Grayscale was the largest buyer because you would go in, you'd buy Grayscale, right? If I'm getting this correct, I want to make sure I don't screw up how she explained it. So you basically, this neutral arbitrage was interesting because you could lock in here and then immediately go over there and short it and you lock in your position, right? So you immediately have the profit on this. And that trade evaporated when the premium went away, right? So it's an interesting point as to like, there was rising yields at that time. This is going back a few months, right? So you had that, you had the rising yields, you had a few kind of macroeconomic conditions that were pressuring markets down. We're starting to see that again right now as of yesterday and today. Markets do this, as you guys know, right? The markets go up, they go down, sentiment's high, it's low, good, bad, right? This is what markets do. And Bitcoin's not, it's not going to escape that. It's going to suffer from the same consequence. They used to say it's an uncorrelated asset. I think last year we realized it's not necessarily an uncorrelated asset. It is a hedge, I think, to inflation, but I wouldn't say it's uncorrelated at this point, right? Because it seems to move with markets, right? If we can see this all the time. But that was an interesting thing, because then on top of all that, you get Elon, who always comes out and says something when the macro backdrop is negative sentiment. So yesterday, you had poor job numbers, and you had the yield actually dropping on the 10-year, right? Which was concerning to people, because that means if it's dropping, people are taking money away from risk assets and putting it to the risk-free asset, right? Because the prices go up, yield goes down, obviously on a 10-year. So why are they doing that? They're coming out of risk assets. They're selling off growth technology companies, possibly Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price is coming down more. Why is price? People always ask me, why is the price of Bitcoin going up? Why is the price of Bitcoin going down? Well, if it's going down, that means there's more sellers than buyers.
It is. That
Am I telling you something you don't know? What answers are you possibly looking for here? This is exactly what's happening, right? The question is why, obviously, right? But that's where Elon comes in and throws out a tweet last night. Did you see Elon's tweet last night?
I think he deleted it afterwards.
It's still there, I think.
About the coins?
What's that?
About the coins? Something about coins?
I'll show you. I'll read it to you guys right now. Give me 2 seconds. So he put up.
It was something about Ethereum and Bitcoin and Dogecoin. He said against something.
Yeah. Exactly. He just doesn't stop, right?
But actually, to be honest, I think that this tweet was indeed sarcasm, and indeed actually he's making fun, and he's not serious about this tweet compared to...
well, we'll know soon enough, right? Because July 21st, Jack has challenged him to come on and talk about Bitcoin and energy FUD. You saw that, right? So here it is. I found it 9 hours ago. BTC and ETH are pursuing a multi-layer transaction system, but base layer transaction rate is slow and transaction cost is high. There is merit, in my opinion, to Doge maximizing base layer transaction rate and minimizing transaction costs, with exchanges acting as the de facto secondary layer. So to your point, he could just be trolling, right?
He must be trolling. He's not stupid. I mean, I think he's trolling, and he understands that he says, let's make this decentralized blockchain into centralized shit.
He sent this tweet at 3:15 a.m. What the fuck is this guy doing? The richest man in the world sitting on Twitter at 3 o'clock in the morning. I guess he probably is in Texas, so maybe it was like 1 a.m. I don't know. But irrespective, right? Like, he puts this out there. But why am I bringing this up? Because you have a backdrop once again where the yield on the 10-year is dropping, which means money's going into the 10-year. Right? It's affecting asset prices coming down. Job numbers were unfavorable. The economic conditions aren't looking so good for the last 24 hours. And so he sees an opportunity to be Mr. Important guy, Mr. Relevancy again. Oh, let me put a tweet out, and that will crash Bitcoin. It looked like it was because of me, and everyone will say, oh, look at Elon, he crashed Bitcoin. I think he just he gets his rocks off on saying, like, the media is saying that I crashed Bitcoin. Yeah, he's him and his girlfriend in his house. He goes, look at this shit. I really think that's what a lot of this is, man. I don't think it's a lot more than that. And he realizes he's not a stupid guy, obviously, right? When these economic conditions are pressuring downward pressure, a tweet from him could just exasperate it even further, and it makes it look like it was because of him. It's really because of everything else. And then that last thing was definitely because of him. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. He's done it once before. I think last night he was trying to test it. Now, if you think about something else with Elon, this is interesting. He buys Bitcoin, and a month later, he announces we sold some Bitcoin, $300 million, right? Buys 1.5, sells, it goes up, number goes up, he takes some profits. He says the reason was we wanted to test the liquidity. These things he's doing may be tests. Now, I could be giving him too much credit, but these could be tests. Can one individual impact this asset? And who has more influence right now than Elon, right, on Twitter? So Absolutely. He wants to know, moving forward, is there a government that could impact it? Is there individuals that could? Let me say, I'm a pretty influential guy. They all saw that I just came out and I bought Bitcoin. Sorry, I'm getting something pop up here, guys. Give me 1 second. So, and everybody's, hanging on every word he says. He jumped in there. Let me see if they think I'm going to go out. I'm going to sell some and announce it and see what they do. So this could be tests, right? To see how the asset class overall, as well as this particular asset within the asset class, is going to react to that. And it may not even be his decision to be doing this. Potentially, it could be a group decision where he's agreeing to it. It could be the board members saying, if this is what you want to do, we want to test this thing, right? Put out some tweets, see what happens. And if it's negative and the price crashes like 20, this is not an asset for us. It's too volatile, right? And I think he's testing the volatility based on his reaction to the market and what, and all this kind of stuff. I could be giving him too much credit though. Maybe he's just fucking around.
I think if he would be testing that's just my personal opinion. He would probably do it before investing 1 billion inside.
No, I think the point is that when you push the money in, right? That's when it matters. Like, you know, when people say you could go paper trade on the stock market, it doesn't work because it's not real. And first of all, your money in is important because that money in cannot be simulated. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you push that money in, the market reacts to the money coming in and it reacts to the money coming out. And then when he puts the money in and he makes a comment, this is all important for the movement and the price action, in my opinion. But again, I really might be like, all my friends think I gave him too much credit. They're hating on him these days, and I'm not hating on him. I'm also not hating on him. You know, I'm indifferent. I could give a shit one way or the other. I think over time, Bitcoin will continue to do what it needs to do. It really doesn't make a difference what an individual says or does. But to that one individual and his constituency, which is his investors, his shareholders, and his board members, and what have you, it does matter, right? They're very, and every other company is also watching this shit, right? When he's playing around like right now. Traditional companies, like think of like GE or something, right? If they're even thinking about this, which they're probably not, but let's just assume they were, they're like, whoa, put the brakes on this right now. Let's see what's going on with this price action. Let's also see what's going on with Elon and, you know, how fickle is this shit? Like, if he says this and this and it crashes to 10,000, we can't be in this thing. These are not technology people, right? For this number to go where we want it to go, you're going to need real money to come into Bitcoin. You're talking about $100 trillion. Is $100 trillion owned by plebs? Is it owned by the average person? Fuck no, right? So for that number to go up, you need the real money, the institutional, traditional money to come in, and they got to get comfortable with that.
And what do you think? I mean, investors also like volatility, right? So Bitcoin gives you that volatility. Do you think that's also something that's attractive to bigger investors, or is it more a detraction at the moment?
Is it attractive to have high volatility? Is that right?
Yeah.
I would say that they don't like the volatility. But anything that's great is highly volatile. Amazon was highly volatile over the last 25 years.
I was going to say that traders like volatility, not investors.
Correct.
Yeah, you're probably correct, yeah.
But if you're a good investor, you understand that high growth tech is volatile, right? It's reactive to markets. When markets crash, tech goes down faster than anything else. But also jumps back faster than anything else. That's the interesting thing about it. So if you could hold through the crash down, there was a point, and I think it was 1999 or 2000, that Amazon lost like 95% of the value. But had you held on from the IPO to today, oh my God, you put in $1,000, you're multimillionaire, right? I mean, it's I think it might be 10 million, $1,000 investment in Amazon at the IPO to today. Good luck getting an IPO today priced the way they used to price IPOs, because the private markets stay private longer, because again, the Fed keeps interest rates so low that the money's easier to get for private companies. They can remain private longer within private markets today, raising capital. So public investors can't get the same returns that they used to get historically by buying IPOs and moving forward. By the time a company goes public like Uber, it's already a $50-60 billion company. These types of companies used to go public at $300, $400, $500 million, right? And then you had that growth ahead for the next 10 or 20 years. That's gone. It's completely gone.
Jay, this is just going fantastic. I have to ask you, would you give us another 30 minutes for a hard stop in 35 minutes from now?
I can, till 1 o'clock, you want to go?
I think that's your time.
My time?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. No, I enjoy the conversation, so give me 1 second. Yeah, I could do that, guys.
Yeah? Can you jump then in the other room? I just loaded it up. Can you jump in the other room? The previous link that I've sent.
Sure, yeah, give me 1 sec. Unless you sent it to me, right? Or did you send it? I don't know.
Oh, yeah. It's just back in the other room.
Oh, no, wait, no, that's not it. 1 sec. Is this it? I think I got it.
Yep, there you go. Okay. Okay, there you go. We're all here again. Okay, perfect. So,
There's something with your cam?
Yeah, I know. I'm changing.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so about energy, I have two questions that I would like to hear your thoughts on, and we just 5 minutes won't be enough to hear your answer, and I think both questions are really good. One is from a person from the audience. It is Snow. This is his nickname. He asked about how do you go by your week. how do you work, relax, hobbies, care for mental health, spirit and body, and so on. But let's finish with that topic. I would like to go a bit deeper in the energy. Bitcoin is this very, very deep rabbit hole. When I started learning about Bitcoin, I first think I have to learn what is blockchain, right? That it's data, then you have another block of data, they're linked with this hash, yada, 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 and how in order to change something at the bottom, you invalidate all the blocks on top, then you start learning about mining, how you expend energy in order to validate these blocks, and then how, how censorship resistance work, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then you start learning about money, because you start questioning, what is money? Is it actually this paper? Why does this paper has value? And so on, and so on. It's such a deep rabbit hole. But I never went into the rabbit hole of energy consumption until the whole FUD around energy consumption came. So literally, even though I'm for years now into Bitcoin, I was still so uneducated on this topic, right? It's mind-blowing how wide this whole space and whole area. And this is why people say that Bitcoin is so hard to get, because it's so multidisciplinary. It's not just programming, it's not just networking, it's just not this, it's just like game theory and economics and this and that. Like, holy moly, how big of a thing it is. And about the energy consumption, started coming these thoughts about how literally Bitcoin is not going to kill the planet, it's going to save the planet. Because actually, it really makes people want to spend energy that you generated with a renewable source. And also the beauty of it, something that, have you watched the clips from Bitcoin for Corporations, the conference? Okay, no. the first video there, the first talk, it's between Michael Saylor and the guys from Stoneridge, the CEO from Stoneridge, Ross Stevens. Ross Stevens. So when I found Michael Saylor, he popped up. The first podcast that I watched with him was with Anthony Pompliano. I think it was the first podcast ever with him. And I was like, holy moly, this guy. Like, I was like, this guy's brilliant. Okay. And then I watched every single podcast with him, and I thought he's the Jedi Master. And then when I saw the podcast with Michael Saylor and Ross Stevens, I was like, Ross Stevens is Yoda, and this guy is like baby, not baby Yoda, but whatever was the Jedi guy that his father is. No, the Darth Vader as a kid. What was his name? Luke Skywalker. There you go. Yeah. Anyway, so my point, I was like blown away by the level of the other guy. I was like, I didn't imagine that this power is possible, to build that power level. Okay, I was blown away. Okay, and what he said is this, that usually when you generate power, you have to obviously transmit it from the source to where you're going to consume it, to cities and so on. And then he talked about the beauty with Bitcoin mining is that you can move the power consumption to the source. And this was literally impossible before that. What are you going to do with this power? There is nothing to consume it there. But now, thanks to Bitcoin, you have this new consumer that is, how is it called? Movable. It's, movable. And I truly believe that now, thanks to Bitcoin, poorer countries from Africa, from Southern America would be able to tap into this, into like, one guy said that I'm not into the Bitcoin business, I'm into the energy price arbitrage business. So he just goes wherever in the world there is the cheapest price of energy. So this way, literally, small and poor countries will be able to export their green energy source on global level. And this literally was impossible until Bitcoin. And this is just mind-blowing to me. So what are your thoughts about power consumption? Where is this going to go? Is it actually going to lift off super poor countries from the poverty? Is this good for the planet as a whole, for society as a whole, and so on?
I think Bitcoin is fixing a lot of things. It's going to fix energy as well. So a friend of mine, again, the guy that told me before, Jason Williams, who wrote that book, he owns before he knew about Bitcoin or was thinking about Bitcoin, he had some patents on robotic arms and stuff like that, and he built out a power plant basically, but he didn't view it that way initially. Initially, it was a recycling plant for tires. So he had this process where he takes a tire and he breaks down the tire, he melts the tire, and inside a tire is like wire and all this like metal stuff. Separates the two, also creates gas. and all kinds of energy. So he's able to recycle the metal, recycle some of the rubber, and burn it down, and it creates like propane and stuff like that. So he was doing this for a while, and he's making money. He was selling the waste, the remnants of what they broke down. Otherwise, you take a tire, you leave it in a landfill, and it pollutants over time to the groundwater below, because they take a very long time to decompose, if at all, and they're really bad for the environment when you throw them into a landfill. And then he's partners with Pomp in a fund, right? They ran Morgan Creek Digital. Pomp says to him, we should look into Ethereum mining. I heard this is profitable. And they were talking about it when they were going from one place to another in North Carolina. They were going to visit their LPs. And Pomp convinces him that we should really look into this at the end of that. So he starts to look into it. And he's like, you're right. There's an arbitrage play here. Just purely an arbitrage play initially. Then realizes, holy shit, it's mining Bitcoin is about energy, and I have all this propane. My cost of energy is zero, basically, right? Other than like his taxes, property, land, whatever. And that was interesting, because today he started doing that in 2016. Today it's to the forefront of everybody's talking about how it's polluting the world, right? It's not really true. There are people that are using geothermal. They're doing all kinds of renewable energy and things like. And so the interesting thing about Bitcoin is that they're competitive with each other, they being the miners, and they're competitive in nature just with themselves and how profitable can I get? So I want to drive my energy costs down as low as possible. So they're going to come up with really interesting competitive things around producing energy to decrease their cost and productivity for their mining operations, right? So there's going to be a lot of innovation around this, I think, over the next 10 and 20 years. And that's something that you're not hearing at all through the mainstream media. They want to focus on the worst part of Bitcoin, which now may not be the case anymore, which was the coal mining out in China. Well, if China says, get the hell out of here, I guess we're not doing coal mining for Bitcoin anymore, at least there. And they're moving not all to one spot. And I know where you sent me in an email, you were asking about the 51% attack. China, there was a threat, potentially. I think it was highly unlikely, but there was a potential. When you kick all the miners out of China, I guess that threat's gone. So that's now gone, right? So that FUD, gone. The fact that there could be a 51% attack. The FUD of energy consumption of coal producing for mining in China, also gone, right? And they're all not going to go to one location. Some are coming to America, some are going to go to Iceland, some are coming all different parts of the world of where they want to go, because they're all trying to figure out, where am I bringing my rigs? Where am I going to go? And where am I going to go that's going to be the cheapest energy producing locations, right? So I think you're going to see a lot of innovation around energy, generation of energy for these mining operations, which I think will trickle over to other parts over the next 5 or 10 years. What people don't talk about enough is that of the waste of energy that is already currently produced, which I think you're alluding to, right? So like more than half of the energy that's created is just lost because they can't transport that, right? So why not just take mining operations to those locations? It's going to go to waste anyway, and you should start mining Bitcoin. So if you're running like a major, if you're an energy company in an area and you have like a dam or something, and they can't use all the energy you're creating, why aren't you using the rest of it to mine Bitcoin? And then what's it hurt you, right? I mean, you mine the Bitcoin, you own the Bitcoin, you hold the Bitcoin, keep it on your balance sheet. You're only going to create more profit for your organization over time. I think you're going to see a lot of that in the coming years. So think about that once again when people start to second guess or question where Bitcoin may go. I think you're going to see a lot of energy companies, traditional energy companies, that are going to get into mining.
Absolutely. I was gonna say the gas flaring now. Literally just today, in today's morning, Friday's show that I do the daily streams, I covered again 3 articles about mining, and one of them was literally showing right now how they plugged into one of these neft digging sites, and they're literally mining Bitcoin there with one big container filled up with miners. And the beauty of this is that this was waste. Literally, it had zero value to the company that digs the oil. Literally, it's just a waste. It's just like a byproduct. They don't care about it. And now they can sell it at minimum price because it costs nothing to them, and any extra revenue is good for them. So this is how the miners can tap into the cheapest possible energy. And the best part is they're even cleaning the air, not polluting it, because instead of throwing this absolutely toxic gas, now it's just CO2, which again, CO2 sounds bad, but it's better than what they're putting into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it just shows how it's driving innovation and just this competition. It's like with everything. It's like in motorsports or during the war or during the Cold War, it was just driving this innovation for everything, or the race to the moon and everything. Like you need something to drive further innovation. I think Bitcoin is the next big driver, and it's just pulling everything behind it. And I think that's a really good thing.
Do you have any thoughts about El Salvador?
In what capacity?
Are they making a mistake? Are they giving a good example that other countries will follow? And do you see in 10, 15, 20 years maybe a future where majority of the countries have dual currency system?
I don't think you're going to see that in America anytime soon. Right. But I do think you're going to see small nations doing this, right? I think their GDP is like 64 billion or something like that. I think I live in New Jersey in America. Our state has a larger GDP than their country. So it's like a small state in America. Not diminishing. I'm not trying to make light of what they're doing or them as a country. And I don't know anything about this president. So I can't endorse him or them in any way, because I don't know what human rights violations they may have or anything. And it may not. I'm not saying they do or don't. But my point is, I have no endorsement whatsoever. But I do think you're going to see other countries, like Paraguay just came out and said they're thinking about it, right? You're going to see other companies that start to say, well, shit, you know what? We may actually increase our GDP by doing this, because these companies are going to come here and other businesses and ecosystem will develop around it. They're going to come here for clean energy. They're going to come here for opportunities, and they're going to create very tax advantage ways for them to come here, or come there, I should say. I think you're going to see a lot of that over the next several years. And it could be a trend that you're going to see that just like it's a domino falling, and you see all these small countries that collectively become a large collective, you know?
I absolutely agree with everything you said, except the states part, that you don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I think it's going to happen in the next 10 years. And here's why I'm saying that. You know, the mayor of Florida, being extremely pro-Bitcoin. He wants even employees to be paid in Bitcoin. He wants taxes to be collectible in Bitcoin. He wants to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. You know Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming. You know how pro-Bitcoin she is. She's constantly there talking on these interviews and discussing Bitcoin. Just recently she said, I have 5 Bitcoin, and then someone on Twitter said, by the way, it's not a good idea to discuss how many Bitcoins you have, and she said, yeah, but I'm a public figure, so you have to. Anyway, and also you have, I forgot what was that other state, but it was neighboring Wyoming. It was the cornfield or something like that. It was like a nickname. The corn circle, what was it called? The corn belt? Come on, what is that state? Next to Wyoming. Anyway, but my point is that there's like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 states that are really pro-Bitcoin. And the thing is that they see it as something that, exactly what you said, it can bring companies, high-tech companies inside the state. They want to bring these companies, they want to create jobs there, they want to get their taxes there. So I actually foresee in the next 10 years, even in the next 5 years, to have this war between the states trying to get the companies in their states. And for instance, just now in New York, there was there is this big miner. Apparently there are some protests about the miners. They're accusing the miner of boiling the lake. There's some big lake, and apparently the temperature went up or something like that. And they're saying, oh, it's because of his miners, and he's cooling off the miners with the water and stuff like that. Anyway, but the point is that I really see in the future division in the states between really pro-Bitcoin states and anti-Bitcoin states.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, I meant from a federal level. So statewide, yeah, there's going to be, just like you're seeing globally, small countries, you're going to see small states or small cities where they see an opportunity. There was a new person running for mayor in New York City that was pro-Bitcoin. I think you're going to see that because they're going to see, like, I can get elected from this. I mean, these politicians will do anything. They have no conviction in anything, right? They don't care about anything.
Hear you, but Cynthia, I really think she's doing this from the bottom
Cynthia
of her heart.
Cynthia's one of the good ones. Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's only a handful though, right? Okay. I mean, then you got guys like Brad Sherman over in Congress. I don't know if you listened to the hearing the other day in Congress where they were talking about Bitcoin.
Oh my God, I did. I streamed it live and I translated it in Bulgarian while streaming it in comedy. I was blown away by that guy who wanted to ban Bitcoin. I was like, go. Already, you know, like, I'm not gonna swear, but I was so pissed off by the lies he said. Like, holy moly, I was so pissed off. You have no idea.
That's Brad. Yeah, that's the Brad Sherman. And you know, the problem is there's people like this still in Congress, and there's hundreds of these people in Congress, unfortunately. There was a good representation on that call. I listened to it, so it was a call to me, but it was a good representation of pro Bitcoin as well as anti-Bitcoin, I think. Or they would call it anti-crypto, because they don't understand that crypto is one thing and then Bitcoin, which is money, is another thing, right? So there's like the tech of blockchain and playing around with fun things, and then there's sound money, totally different, you know. Brad Sherman doesn't understand any of it though, right? Like just doesn't get it. He sees it as a threat to the dollar.
Exactly. No, it's not just that. There was an article on the next day. I think it was a bit overdone, but it was saying, you know, exposed X guy talking anti-Bitcoin, and then you check his donors, and they were Bank of America, this and that, only fintech companies or bank companies in the US giving him like total of 100K or something for his 2020
100%.
campaign.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. They have no conviction in anything other than, are you giving my campaign any money?
And then I really love the next guy that talked after him. He said, like, I really hope the regulators listen to the whole panel. And he said that when they talked about anti-money laundering, he said, he quoted some Cathy, I don't know what was her name, about a report she've done on money laundering. And she said that 99.9% of the money laundering doesn't go prosecuted. And I was again blown away. I was, how can this be a this is insanity.
He was saying something like, if people had floated the idea of a $10,000 bill. He's like, but if you have I don't know if it was Brad who said this or another congressman, but he's like, you take $10,000 bill. He's like, well, it's glad we didn't do that. I don't think it was Brad. I think it was another guy. It's like, we're glad we didn't do that, because then, you know, these drug dealers, you know, they would take those 10. That's why you shouldn't. And Bitcoin's also a way to launder money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there's not money laundering already with cash. Are you kidding me? Like, there's not drug money. People aren't using cash in drug deals.
The CIA or whatever it was, ex-director, talked about, he was asked to do a report on Bitcoin and on laundering money and so on. Do you remember? Like, it was like a month ago. The ex-CIA director, it was some big name in the States, yada, yada. And he said, I went into, educating myself on the topic, expecting, I'm going to find here the dirty shirts of Bitcoin. And then he was like, I was blown away by how trackable it is, how easy it is to identify which are the bad transactions, and that it was, I forgot what was the number, but I think it was under 1% was for illicit activities, and in the traditional system, it was something like 3 to 4. I was also surprised. How can it be 3 to 4? Like, this sounds like insanely corrupt system. Like, it's 0.3 to 0.4. I'll be like, okay, maybe that's okay. 3 to 4% is a very high percent for illicit activities in any financial system.
So you got to ask yourself why these hackers that shut down the pipeline, it's like, why are they asking for their payment in Bitcoin? To your point, it's traceable, right? Why aren't they asking for it in Monero? Is there really a hacker? Because just go with me for a second on that.
Yeah.
So someone hacks, whatever, the pipeline shuts it down. They say, we want to get paid. We want to get paid in Bitcoin. They pay them in Bitcoin, then they take it back and they go, so now they're trying to, I think, prove to people that it's not as secure as you think it is. They're trying to create fear and uncertainty and doubt, right, about Bitcoin. Oh, Bitcoin's safe and it's anonymous, and which it's sort of pseudo-anonymous, right? But you can trace, you can kind of paper trail it, right? If you don't do
what are they gonna
right.
do? Deposit it to Coinbase and cash it out?
Right, like, so, but they'll have that, they understand the address, and if the address moves it again in the future, they can try to catch it.
Absolutely,
way,
yeah,
right?
this is what I'm saying.
But
like,
you can't do that with Monero, so why aren't they asking for Monero? You're
Yeah.
smart enough to hack the pipeline, but not to ask for the right cryptocurrency, which you can immediately convert it to Bitcoin if you wanted to. Come on.
And it's weird.
You buying that? I'm not buying that one, guys. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think there's going to be a huge hack. American Hodl talked about this on my podcast when he came on. He's like, there's going to be a huge hack. It's coming, cyber attack. They're going to demand a huge number of Bitcoin, 20 million, something crazy, 100, something like this, right? And then their government's say, we need to stop Bitcoin. This is terrible. Look what they're doing. If there was no Bitcoin, there'd be no hack, because there'd be no way to get the money. Meanwhile, there's Monero and all this other shit, right? So, and they could always just say, give me fucking cash, right?
Exactly.
So, but they're trying to move to a CBDC.
Exactly.
And if they get rid of cash and they get rid of transferring numbers on a screen the way it is, and it's all done through the electronic payment system, they will, they can eliminate things that way, and that's probably where they're trying to move towards.
Okay, so CBDC scares the shit out of me, and literally today, again, when I do my shows, I open, I check Twitter, what's happening, I check Reddit, what's happening, I highlight interesting comments, I translate them to Bulgarian, yada, yada, yada. And literally, the most voted comment to one, I don't know who that is. Do you know, Alesh, who that is? There's some really fat guy talked about CBDC, the clip went viral, yada, yada. And he talked literally about how if you have $100 bill, we don't know who used it, where did it go, and so in CBDC, we will know everything, and we're able to control it. And people are saying how you can program it. Literally, the example that I gave today was like, I don't know, let's say in the whole year, if I don't spend at least 10% of my money, they start adding negative interest at 1%, then 2%, then 3%, then 5% to force me to spend my money. But what if I don't want to spend my money? And they target me based on my economical activity. If I don't spend, they force me to spend. And at the same time, again, in corruption in Bulgaria, I mean, it's not the worst. It really isn't. There is like worse examples, but again, it's quite bad. And I really feel like in Bulgaria, in order to have, let's say, large business or whatever, you have to be like, we have this saying like this. I don't know how is it in English, but it means like you have to be friends with the rules. Like if you're not, they're gonna shut down your business. They're gonna go with all the regulation, everything against you. They're gonna mess you up. And the thing is like here, I feel like there is so many stories of even people who sold their real estate and they're like, I haven't sold that. That's not my signature, but it is there, the paper is there. So this is why, in my opinion, we have to move to decentralized blockchains about everything. And I trust that the Bitcoin that I have, I do have it, but I cannot trust any paper record of me owning this flat or that flat and so on. And with CBDCs, I'm truly scared because you can be erased from the system, you can be blocked, they can do everything with you, they can analyze you, they can, like, you might not be able to get a job again because they might even disclose, let's say, private data as a leak. So what do you think about CBDCs?
I think that when I was in high school, I remember going to my grandparents and saying, first time I got a credit card, I think I was a senior in high school, I got a credit card and I said, this is amazing. Why do we even have cash? Doesn't make any sense. I think at some point in our lifetime, there will be no cash. It makes no sense. I think there's only like a few $1 trillion in cash. I think if I'm not mistaken, I could be screwing these numbers up. You Google it, verify. But I think it's like $6-7 trillion in money, US dollars, and I think $1 or $2 trillion of it is printed or something like that, right? And they destroy cash constantly, bad bills that are old and stuff like that, right? So they keep remaking it when they bring it back to the mint. I remember saying this over 25 plus years ago that I thought we would be cashless at some point, but I was thinking it would be credit cards. Like, I wasn't thinking of blockchain technology or anything like that, It makes sense. If I was the government, I would want to do the same thing to to try to collect as much tax revenue as possible. That is their goal, right? That is the intended goal of the government, is to finance operations by collecting taxes, and making sure that they're collecting the taxes is to get everybody on the same standard so they can see every single transaction. But what's going to happen is they're just going to pass that cost along to the end user, to the average American, right? So what's going to happen is, you go to buy a slice of pizza and it's $3 or whatever it is, and have to go to $5 or $6 because a lot of these companies that are local merchants, local businesses on Main Street, they're hiding a lot of their cash and not paying tax. And they're not doing it so they can get rich. They're doing it so they can survive. Because everybody else is doing it, they have to do it. It's not like they don't want to pay their taxes, but if the competitor next door isn't paying his taxes and he's hiding and inflating his profitability, then you have to do the same thing or you're going out of business, right? And so they're all doing it. If you eliminate that, great for the government, not good for the average American, causes inflation. It's going to make prices go up, and it's going to make it's going to change everything, So CBDC is their intent. They're going to do it. It's coming 100%. There will be no cash in the future at some point. I don't know when. And it will be 100% CBDC. To your point, though, they can control it. They can take it out right when they want. It's really important to own assets, right? Whether it's Bitcoin or real estate or something like that, or stocks. They can't just take that from you, right? But if they could drop the money in, helicopter it in through the CBDC, they could probably just take it right back out. So I don't like that.
My girlfriend owned $300, right? And he had $2,000 in her bank account. And they froze their entire bank account. They didn't freeze just the bottom 300, they froze the whole thing. I had to give her in cash a loan to go pay their debt to unlock her 2,000. Yeah. And this is with a commercial bank. And the thing is that the one bank had to request from the other bank, yada, yada, yada. It's a whole process. And the example that I read today was like with Visa as a, as a company, as a for-profit organization, the government have to have a warrant to ask for your data. They are not just gonna directly give it all your transactions and so on. But with CBDC, literally all the data from everyone, from the whole 360 million Americans is going to go to the same place. And you have, this saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'm really scared shitless.
And for example, just as an example, Snowden, for example, he was receiving donations in dollars. All his accounts were frozen. And then he opened Bitcoin. That was, I don't know which year, but he said that was the best thing to happen to him, because at that time, so people were donating small amounts of money, which obviously constituted bigger amounts, but then Bitcoin exploded in price. So now the Bitcoin he had, let's say he got like $100,000, I'm making numbers up, but that could be literally millions and millions of dollars now, and he can live happily ever after just with those donations, which were not even that high at that moment. And just,
what he was saying earlier is that like PayPal was notorious for this in the early 2000s, where you had some questionable activity on the account for whatever, a return, something like that. They would lock the whole account up. Can't withdraw any of the money, can't put any more money into it. I think actually probably put money in, they can't take it out, right? They would lock them into this centralized system. This is the problem with centralization, and just why I don't really like anything that's on the Ethereum platform, because it could be quasi-centralized, in some cases totally centralized. You really want to be truly decentralized from that perspective, and that would be Bitcoin.
All right, Alesh, you as the best co-host I've seen in my life, do you have any question that you would like to ask? And I said that the last question I would really like to go with you is about the, how do you go by your week? How do you divide when you're going to work, when you're going to have family time? And do you consider working? Because there is this saying, how's this translated in English? Something like, if you find a job that you like, you'll never be working again, something like that.
Right. No, I have never worked. To me, I agree with that statement. And I had one job when I got out of college. I got fired. I'm unemployable. And so I had to go create things and build things that I thought was interesting and like what you guys do, right? So like I was always building stuff that I just found to be interesting. So it doesn't feel like work when you're playing. It feels like play. And that's when you're winning, right? Regardless of what your net worth is, regardless if you don't have to work again, never get your fuck you money, do what you like doing. You're here for a really small time when you think about, right? The planet's been here for billions of years. You're going to live to maybe 100 if you're lucky. It's pretty small. It's like a drop. It's like a one grain of sand in all the beaches, right? That's your lifetime, right? Don't waste it doing shit that you don't like doing. It doesn't mean you don't have to go work for people. Like a lot of founders of companies and entrepreneurs will say everybody should be entrepreneurial. Well, if everybody's an entrepreneur, then who's working for you, right? So I don't think that's necessary. There's risk tolerances, there's emotional intelligence levels, there's all kinds of things that make somebody good at doing that versus not. And frankly, it's far less stressful to just work for a company and leave it at the job and go home to your family for most people, I think. And frankly, I don't even want my kids to be founders and entrepreneurs per se, because there's a lot of stress, right? When you have every problem is your problem when you're running a company. Much different than if you just work. My day is simple. I get up in the morning, I have breakfast with the kids and my wife, and from there, I usually have a planned day of some sort, right? Whatever it is that I'm doing, from like reviewing docs for a deal, or have a phone call set up with an investment that I previously made. And some of that stuff happens spontaneously. A lot of it's planned. I do things like this sometimes. I have my own podcast where I interview people once a week. I've had like Scaramucci on my show, and professional athletes and entrepreneurs and stuff. And to me, it's just fun to do. I want to write a book, and I'm going to get a bunch of findings around those people and write a book on the findings, which the show is just my name, just, most people do, right? So it's just the Jay Gould Show. I interview people that I call docents. Docents, as I defined it, are people that influence and guide others. They inspire, influence, and guide others through their actions of what they've done. So I spend a lot of my time doing that, but it's summertime here in the US right now on the East Coast. So I spend a lot of my time with the kids at the beach, or we go to the pool or go on the boat and stuff like that. I got 4 kids, so we got a lot of things to do. Right? We got soccer and like swim and tennis and you name it. My kids are always doing something. So there's a lot of that. My wife is rock star. She always picks up if I have works related type of things to do. She's like, don't worry, you don't have to come today. I know you got some stuff I saw on your calendar, because we share a calendar on our phones. She can see when I have things going on. But yeah, so my day's it's erratic. I don't have a schedule like that. So wake up, breakfast with the kids. Usually after that, I'll work out in the gym. My gyms are over here. I'm in my basement. So I have a gym down here. So I'll work out. Really important. I always tell Bitcoiners, because I see these people in Bitcoin, it's like, guys, get in the fucking gym, man. You got all this time on your hands because you made money. You don't have to work. Start working out. You want to live long enough to enjoy this shit,
Exactly.
So try to keep yourself healthy. That's what I try to do. I eat really well. I don't eat any sugar. I don't drink alcohol. So I have a very clean lifestyle. I want to be here as long as possible. I love my life, and I'm a very lucky, fortunate person. I have a great family. They're all healthy, and I want to stay healthy with them. So my day is hanging out with my kids, my house. I really never leave the house. I'm always here, unless we're on vacation or something like that, or a sporting event or something like that. So, very simple lifestyle. I'm not chasing the money anymore. I feel like the money's chasing me. That sounds weird, but it kind of is. Once you've made money and you have escape velocity, deals and opportunities keep coming to you. I feel an obligation to go after those deals and obligation with those deals and opportunities, because I don't know that my kids will have that. Just because they inherit my money someday doesn't necessarily mean they're going to inherit my intellect. They're going to inherit my access that I have, that I've created for me. I don't know how transferable all of that is. So I want to capture as much value in my lifetime for them as I can. And hopefully it is transferable. We'll see.
Yeah, completely agree. I think some good stuff. I just have one question. I think I asked this to everyone. When did it click for you about Bitcoin? Because everyone gets exposed and initially you think, okay, this is just a fad, it will fade away. But at some point, like everyone that's truly in Bitcoin, you get to the point and say, okay, oh shit, this is different than I thought. What was it for you?
It's a good question. It's an evolution, right? You slowly start like there's a list of FUD, right, that everybody has to get through, and you have to check off. No, it's not possible. Highly unlikely. Yeah, maybe. I don't doubt it, right? You got to get through those things. 51% attack, whatever those ideas of how it could all go away. The biggest thing I always thought was the attack, right? I was always worried of like a potential hack, or it would just you'd have a complete loss of confidence in the asset, right? At that point, the entire asset class, not just Bitcoin. I think everything, right? If Bitcoin got hacked, everything's fucked. That's what I've always believed. I think in the short term, that is true. I thought it was totally fucked. And I became really good friends with American Hodl. We talk all the time, and he actually got me over and I already had a very large position, but once he got me over that, I pushed a lot more in and feel way more comfortable than I ever felt about it before. He's like, they'll just fork it, they'll fix it, and they'll relaunch it, and the price will suffer, and there'll be panic, and there'll be blood in the streets, and it'll be an opportunity to fucking buy this thing, right? Because if we realize you can just take the UTXO and you can move it over, and it's all good again. Good luck hacking it again, because they'll fix that problem if there is a problem. I don't think there is, but maybe there's something that no one's ever seen in 12 years and 365 days in a year, 24 hours a day. People are trying to hack it, and no one's figured it out yet. But maybe someone will figure it out, right? And I don't think so. Highly unlikely. Jimmy Song, another one. I don't know if you know, guys knows Jimmy. He was on Clubhouse quite a bit with us. He used to talk about this too. After talking to some of these guys over the last 6 months, I got to tell you, and I've been in this since 2016, gained a lot of conviction talking to them just from a technical perspective of things that I'm not a core developer. So Jimmy's a core developer. He's talked about it. He's pushed commits to Bitcoin. And, I got to tell you, they've given me a lot more confidence than I was able to develop on my own, right? I do encourage people to go on Clubhouse, go look for Bitcoin on Clubhouse and listen to these people. These are leading experts. There are people that are coming on in these rooms like Max Kaiser and Jimmy Song and American Hodl and Jason Williams and Pomp and you name it. They're all coming in these rooms with us when we're moderating these rooms, and you can listen to this discussion and we talk about what could go wrong and why it's nothing to be concerned about because it's probably highly unlikely. And here's the reasons, yada, yada, yada. Reading it is one thing. Having exhaustive conversation with people like we're doing today, where you can ask a follow-up question, that's a whole nother ballgame, right? And I think Clubhouse, for that reason, is probably the best social media app that I've ever seen, because you can put out a little tweet and yes, somebody can reply, but then you may not get a response back from the person who created it. If you're on a stage with somebody and you're like, no, I don't understand. Can I pause you for a second? Can you just explain this one part, and then you get the nuances of it, right? So I wasn't on Bitcoin Twitter, believe it or not. I just recently got introduced to it. I didn't even know. I had a Twitter following of like a few thousand people. I don't know, close to 10,000. I've doubled my Twitter following just talking about Bitcoin with all these Bitcoin guys. And I'm learning. Like for me, I'm learning. I think we're all learning, right? Nobody knows everything. Even like you said before, Michael Saylor, American Idol calls him Rookie of the Year. Which is great. And he really is. Of all the years, he's the rookie of all the years.
Yeah,
right?
no, the impressive part with him is because by heart, he's engineer, right? So the way he constantly talks about energy, conserving energy, closed loops and so on, like he's just on another level. This is what I mean. Like he literally sees Bitcoin from another angle that most people are unable to see. And me, after maybe now hundreds of hours of his content, I still can't even repeat what he's saying. Like I get it. Now it's ingrained in my brain. It's here. It's recorded, but I can't even reproduce it.
So Alesh, to answer your question, do not have a pivotal moment to say, that's the moment, that's the one thing that got me over the hump. I will give a lot more credit to these Bitcoin influencer guys that I became friends with that explain some things from a perspective that I had not previously heard. I wasn't in Bitcoin because I was convinced by the influencers to be in Bitcoin. I was already in Bitcoin because I saw it from a perspective of, I just saw like, well, money's going to move in here. Money is moving in here. I can see number going up. I can see value going in. It makes sense to me. But when looking at the history of it and doing the light reading that I did do on it previously, and now diving in deeper and deeper over the last 12 months, and particularly over the last 6 months, having deep conversations with these guys, my conviction is 100% stronger than it's ever been. I have 100% conviction in Bitcoin. Regardless of what this price does, it could drop down to $5,000. I'm not selling. I'm buying more of it if it does that, which is also why I don't want to go all in, because price can do anything that has nothing to do with Bitcoin, right? We can have an economic collapse and Bitcoin will suffer. We saw it last year. It's called a liquidity crisis. Everybody's selling everything when that shit happens, including Bitcoin. Even though that's the last thing you should be selling, that's exactly what everybody will start doing. The Bitcoin hodlers, the long-term OGs, they're not selling, right? They're going to be buying. And I want to be in their camp when that's happening. I don't want to be the guy selling when the price is crashing. So to answer your question, Alesh, no, I don't have a aha moment. I had a lot of aha moments, and the aha moments relate to all canceling out fear. You just got to get through all the FUD, right? Like, what are those things? China, energy is a new one. Well, it's not new, but it's new today, right? When you get through all these different things and you realize it's not valid, you really start to question where this narrative is even coming from. And then I think it is driven from the powers that be above us, because they have control by controlling the money. If you control the money, you control the people. If you can't control your own money, you can't control your own life. If Bitcoin allows you to control your own money, you can control your life. So they don't want that. They want to have control, right? They feel like they need to have control. Also, we haven't talked about this. I mean, we got like a minute here, but we haven't talked about this. But like the transition to hyper Bitcoinization, right? It's not going to be smooth. The government doesn't just release control that easy, right? And I think they're starting to feel it, which is why they have a congressional hearing, right? They saw that run up happen so quickly, and they're like, holy shit, if it can go from like that to that quick, and it pulled back halfway, and if we believe the stock to flow, this thing could be like $300,000-$400,000 in the next few years. It could be $1 million. Holy shit, this is, you're talking about multi tens of trillions of dollars in value. We got to look into this, right? Now it's on the radar. It really wasn't on the radar before. Like, it's for drug dealers and shit. Like, they laughed it off, right? A bunch of crackheads were doing that shit, right? And now they're looking at it and they're saying, like, this is actually a threat to our democracy and our dollar and our ability to control these people. Oh shit, that's real. And on the flip side, you can get control of your life by owning Bitcoin. That's the key. If they can control you by printing money and deciding who and where to put it and who suffers and who's the winner and the beneficiary of this and who's not, because they're controlling that. Let's be very clear about that. Look what Wells Fargo just did yesterday. No more personal lines of credit. That's it. Corporations, sure. You as an individual, nope, no more.
Really?
What does that say? What does that say? Why is that? That's scary. What are they seeing that I'm not seeing? Right? Like, what are they afraid of? Get your Bitcoin. It's like the guy at the baseball game, who wants your Bitcoin? Here's your Bitcoin. Go get your Bitcoin, because when the crash happens, Bitcoin prices will probably drop, as we've seen last time, but it will be the one real asset to own that will pull through all of this on the other side, because it starts with a store of value. It'll eventually move to a unit of account. right, over time. So medium of exchange, then and then into unit of account at some point, right? And you're going to see that in places like El Salvador and Paraguay and other smaller nations. And we're going to say, firsthand, how does it help their country? And others are watching. Other small countries are watching. They're going to see, is it going to help the GDP? Is it going to help the economy? And if it does, you're going to see more of it, and that's going to be number go up.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. It was really amazing. I'm sure that the audience will be extremely happy. I was looking from time to time at the chat, a lot of positive feedback.
I can't read any of it though.
Yeah.
We have to translate it all.
But yeah, we're extremely grateful for your time. It was a really fantastic conversation. I'm extremely happy that, look at this, like, I'm Bulgarian. Currently I'm in Bulgaria. I still work for London, but I work remotely. And here is Aleš, he's Slovenian in London. You're in America, and we talk about the same thing. We talk the same language. I met like an expression, but currently we also speak English, the same language. But anyway, you get it. Like we understand each other, even though we have absolutely different background, absolutely everything is different, right, but we get it. Like that's just fantastic. I know.
Bitcoin brings people together. Bitcoin fixes a lot of things, and this is another thing it does right here, like you said. I agree.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Amazing podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Bye.